At this time, I'd like to invite students Aurora Glure and Morgan Schnoll to the stage. When a college issues an honorary degree, it does so because the recipient of the degree is someone who upholds and lives an example of something that we want in ourselves and we want in our college community. This year, we are so very proud to honor artist Samuel Bak. The show in the Montserrat Gallery earlier this year of Samuel Bak's paintings was co-curated by Dr. Lynn Cooney and by Aurora and Morgan. So it is fitting that this honorary degree awarded to Samuel Bak will be presented by these two students who were both profoundly impacted by these paintings and by the exhibition. Sam, Kurt, please join me.
Thank you, Brian. Samuel Bak, your life and your career inspire us. As an artist, as a witness, as one who remembers, and one who looks to the future, you show us a full and creative life. For more than 60 years, you have shown people in galleries, museums, universities, and public institutions around the globe works of remembrance, resistance, and hope, rooted in an unfathomable atrocity. Your paintings, however, soar above these roots. They ask us to connect with moral and ethical issues that continue to bear upon the world. We are inspired by your tireless commitment to painting, the hours you spend in the studio, the volume of work you produce, and the rebellion against historical amnesia. We draw strength from your example. May your commitment and achievement inspire others in our Montserrat community to contribute to a deeper, more humane, more beautiful, and more hopeful future for all people. In grateful appreciation of your leadership in the arts, the Doctor of Fine Arts, honoris causa, is bestowed upon you, Samuel Bak, by virtue of the authority vested in us by the Board of Trustees of Montserrat College of Art.
Thank you.
By virtue of the authority of the Board of Trustees of Montserrat College of Art, I confer upon Samuel Bak the degree of Doctor of Fine Arts, honoris causa, with all the rights, privileges, honors, and responsibilities pertaining thereto. Congratulations, Dr. Bak.
Dr. Bak will now deliver the commencement address.
Well, I must say that sometimes doing art is like putting a message into a bottle and throwing it into the ocean, and then suddenly discovering that it comes back to you, that it has brought through the message. It is very moving. Dear students, dear faculty, dear court, thank you so much for the honor that you're bestowing upon me. It is a great acknowledgement of my art. And not only my art, but also the complex themes that it tackles. It is an artist's dream come true. I must admit, though, it is not my first, but the emotions it stirs are profoundly touching, and I am almost at a loss for words. You invited me to speak about my life, my art. They spread across close to 9 decades of my existence. Yes, a lot has happened to me, a lot, not only to me, but to the world. And it stirs many reflections about the roads I took in my past and the many faceted aspects of my work that brought me to this important moment. How should I begin? 1 or 2 interlocutors can easily get from me a spontaneous monologue, but a large gathering and an event of this significance create a different situation. I must take a good moment to ponder. Words are carefully put down on paper and exposed to my short-sighted eyes. Reading them risks getting in my way. Rest assured, I feel comfortable. I know that my paintings, which have been exhibited in your gallery, paved their way into many minds and hearts, and I'm sure that they have brought me many, many new friends. Let us travel in time. Let us have a look at this event from a faraway perspective. Aren't we but a tiny fraction of our globe, all we who here in this theater? I'm reflecting on our human history, on our own and on other civilizations. They began many millennia ago. Script wasn't invented, people were illiterate, but they would gather around a bonfire, often in a cave, and listen to a storyteller. A tribal togetherness was of great comfort, and stories carried in them clear judgments about good and evil, about the just and unjust. I imagine that by then some of these prehistoric humans understood that enduring conflicts, struggles, and wars brought on suffering and death. Alas, some of the present leaders wouldn't agree with me or with this assumption. People thought that peace and growth of societies that lived in harmony defined and still define our vast potential. Ancient Israelites listened to the text of the Bible centuries before they were set into script. So did the Greeks, who let Homer enchant them with the epic poems of the Iliad and Odyssey, or the Mahabharata of the Hindus is yet another example. The written form of all these worldly riches came much later. On the walls of deeply set caves, prehistoric artists left signs that still survive. It took centuries to turn such images into hieroglyphs, ideograms, or symbols. Gradually, they became letters that represented the sound of the human speech. Consequently, different ways of writing came into existence. They enabled humans to share knowledge, establish laws, set rules, communicate, negotiate, and flourish. Humans were given the opportunity to evolve, but sometimes they did not seize it and let their most vile instincts take over. I was a boy of 6 when World War II began, and 11 when it ended. My city, Vilna, today called Vilnius, the capital of Lithuania, had a Jewish community of 80,000 people. When I survived, we were 2,000. The rate of survival was 1 to 40. The Nazis murdered my best friend, Samek, a boy of 7, my 4 grandparents, uncles, aunts, my father. I experienced the fate of being a homeless survivor, a wandering and wandering Jew. I experienced the acute fear of illegally passing borders, later of being in uniform and carrying a gun. And with time, I became a vagrant in search of a country that was livable, that would be livable. 30 years ago, I settled in Massachusetts. My memoir, entitled Painted in Words, published over 2 decades ago, but still in print, speaks of all that. It has been translated into many languages. When I was a kid, my family realized that I possessed the unusual talent for the fine arts. An only child, I was pampered, spoiled, inundated by my preferred toys, colored pencil and paper. I was encouraged to draw primarily on paper, leaving wallpaper and furniture alone. As a young artist, I hesitated between 2 possible choices: designing for the theater or creating paintings. Both presented challenges for making a living, but they had their magic that was different. Theater work was a collective occupation. One belonged to a closely knit group formed of friendships or of clashes. Unforeseen successes or failures were faced in company and debated. The stage demanded a total availability of time, endless time, over which there was no control. On the other hand, there was the noiseless work of the brush. Paintings were created in solitude. They demanded dedication, self-discipline, and self-assurance. I became the dramaturge, whatever I invented. The director, actor, stagehand, everything was in me. From the first touch of the paintbrush to the application of the final varnish of canvas, my entire productivity depended on me, but I was in control. As a young painter, I was overwhelmed by all that had happened in the world of fine arts. From the cave paintings to the Renaissance, from the Impressionists to the Cubists to the endless fireworks of the avant-garde, of modernism, of some 60 years ago. How was I to find my way? How was I to distinguish mere fashion from true innovation? The art firmament of the 20th century was constantly aglow. It told me to take advantage of the artist's freedom that became a rule and to navigate the unknown, as defined by Kandinsky, Mondrian, Klee, or Hartung, to name just a few. I was enchanted, confused, and defied by all I saw. How would I find my inner self, my true authenticity? Who was I? What made me think the way I thought? Were all my questioning searchings for inexistent answers? Or were they answers in disguise? The Holocaust has exposed me as a child to events that made me witness the worst that humans were capable of, as well as the very best. Acts of self-sacrifice, altruism, unbelievable courage. Extraordinary Christians to whom I owe my life jeopardized their own. But the sadism, the brutal murder, and genocide were colossal. As a young boy, I had no idea of the enormous dimension of the crime that I witnessed. I managed to grasp it much later. After all, I grew up among adult survivors of ghettos and camps, beings that were fragments of destroyed families. I listened to many heart-wrenching stories and shared with them their inexpugnable grief. I learned a lot by watching documentaries and films on the Shoah, and even more by reading and reading and reading of books. To let all this experience sink into my psyche, I had to know more than the history of art. I had to understand the history of my times, and above all, ask myself the essential questions about the complexities which determine our human condition. How was it possible? Obviously, all these ponderings done years ago when I was a much younger and much more malleable being left in me a heavy deposit. I studied art in Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and Paris. When I moved to Rome, Rome brought me my first success. After a predictable struggle of any young painter with the intricacies of shapes and colors, I reached the crucial sphere of choice, form or content, or how to manage between the two of them. What was the point in doing what I was doing? I realized I had a story to tell, an almost sacred duty to fulfill. I had to show my murdered family that in me they had someone they could rely on. In me they would live forever. I had to show them that I could carry the weight of their expectations and that they so lovingly put on my shoulders and asked to tell their tragic story. They did not entirely live in vain. They would be remembered. Moreover, I tried to understand the conditions that created the tragedy of the community into which I was born and the world that now was gone. Why were we considered different? People had different ways of living and different religions. They were made in different shapes and colors. For me, the concept of race did not exist. Race was invented by racism. Racism was the eternal plague of primitive tribalism, the same that set into motion the crimes of lynching, of cleansing, of anti-Semitism. The tribalism that possessed a potential for goodness could have left it flourish, chose the other way. It dreamt of a big daddy, a Führer, an autocrat who would give them riches and power. There were so many stories in me. They craved for a cave, a bonfire, and listeners, or even better, galleries and viewers of my art. There was a problem. People avoid stories that hurt, images that are painful, and therefore condemned to remain mute. I had to find a way to do my painting, storytelling indirectly, metaphorically, symbolically, visions that ask for interpretation. Viewers are attracted by what they consider as beauty. The familiar and the attractive could be my bait to garner their attention. I had to create paintings in a pictorial language that seemed to belong to a faraway past, yet related to our present world. Paintings that at first glance looked harmless. The contents of what I desire to convey should go beyond my personal experience of the Holocaust. The state was the beginning. It continued as an exploration of our human condition, beyond the horrific catastrophe, beyond the tentative and only partial repairs, beyond the feeling that things aren't what they seem to be. Beyond all that, men could learn, could adapt and improve, and most importantly, never lose sight of the light on the horizon, which is the glimmer of much-needed hope. Hope is not an empty word. The society in which we live is far from perfect, and there is much that the younger generation will have to do, daringly, forcefully, and enthusiastically, to improve it. You, young people, have before you a terrific task. If my suggested travel in time has taken you back to prehistoric times, to the caves, let us for a moment stop some years before the Civil War, when slavery was the rule, medical care hardly existed, and the chances of individuals to live beyond a young age were null. The opportunities that you are now given are colossal. Your input will be of the greatest importance, and all I could add to what I said is, please accept my very best wishes and very best luck to all of you. Thank you. Thank you.